You've probably scrolled past a funeral before. A photo, a hashtag, a stranger's grief compressed into a caption. You felt something for a second, then you moved on. That's how most of us touch death now, from a safe distance, through a screen. But the real answer to what happens when someone we love dies is far stranger than a scroll and a sigh. It reaches back further than religion, further than language, maybe. It reaches into caves. Somewhere in the Zagros Mountains, in what is now northern Iraq, there is a cave called Shanidar. Tens of thousands of years ago, a group of Neanderthals used it as shelter, and in that cave, they buried their dead. Not dumped them, not left them for scavengers. Buried them. One skeleton in particular, known as Shanidar 4, was found with unusually high concentrations of pollen clustered around the body. For decades, archaeologists told a beautiful story about this. They said the Neanderthals had laid flowers on the grave. A flower burial, they called it. Bright yellow ragwort, blue cornflowers, a funeral bouquet, 40,000 years old. It's a stunning image. A grieving Neanderthal, kneeling in dim cave light, placing flowers on a friend's chest. But here's the twist you were promised. Later research complicated the story. Some scientists, including researchers who re-examined the site decades after the original 1960s excavation led by Ralph Selecki, argued the pollen might have been carried in by burrowing rodents, not mourners. Persian gerds, small gerbil-like animals, are known to stash seeds and flowers underground in exactly this kind of pattern. So which is it? Grieving hands or a rodent's pantry? The honest answer is, we don't fully know, and that uncertainty is the point, because even without the flowers, the burial itself is not in question. The body was placed deliberately in a pit. That much the evidence supports clearly. Something in a Neanderthal mind decided a dead body deserved more than being left where it fell. Think about what that means. A species without smartphones, without agriculture, without written language, still paused long enough to dig, to place, to cover. Grief, it turns out, might be older than almost everything else we call civilization. Why would evolution bother with something so costly? Digging a grave takes energy. Energy a hunter-gatherer group could have spent finding food, defending territory, staying alive. Nature is usually ruthless about waste. So why did burial survive, generation after generation, when it offers no obvious survival benefit to the person doing the burying? One answer comes from anthropologist Paul Pettit, who has spent decades studying the archaeology of death. Pettit argues that early burial wasn't really about the dead at all. It was about the living. A body left in the open is a source of disease, a magnet for predators, a constant visual reminder of loss every time the group walked past it. Burying someone, Pettit suggests, may have started as a practical act that slowly became something more. A way to close a wound, a way to keep moving forward without stepping over your grief every single day. That reframes the entire question, doesn't it? Burial might not have begun as a spiritual ritual. It might have begun as an act of self-preservation, one that only later grew a soul. But something happens along the way that pure practicality can't explain. Somewhere between digging a hole for hygiene and painting the walls of a tomb, humans started adding meaning. Ochre, shell beads, tools placed beside the body, as if the dead might still need them. At a site called Sungir, in Russia, archaeologists uncovered the graves of 2 children, buried around 34,000 years ago, covered in over 10,000 painstakingly carved ivory beads each. Each bead alone might have taken an hour to make. That's not hygiene. That's not a rational calculation about disease control. That's love, expressed the only way a Paleolithic parent had available, through labor, through hours spent shaping ivory in the dark for someone who would never see it. You feel that, don't you? Even across 34,000 years, the shape of that grief is recognizable. Here's where the story turns inward, toward you. Psychologist George Bonanno, who has spent over 2 decades studying how people cope with loss, found something that surprises most people. Grief does not follow the neat 5 stages many of us were taught. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, in that tidy order, is largely a myth. Bonanno's research instead shows that most people are far more resilient than they expect. Many move in and out of sadness quickly, function relatively well within weeks, and don't experience anything close to a linear progression. Grief, in other words, isn't a staircase you climb. It's weather. It comes in waves, clears, returns, clears again. Why does that matter for a story about Neanderthals and ivory beads?